build this laser for a later video. But for the time being, here's a quick rundown of what's all inside this laser. So I start by feeding wall voltage into this circuit breaker, which then feeds it into this variac, which gives me adjustable voltage. And from there, it goes into these resonant microwave oven transformers, which then feeds into this Cockcroft-Walton voltage multiplier that also takes the AC voltage and converts it to DC. And then I feed it into a little inductive choke there, and then also into this disconnect switch. And then finally, all that electricity goes inside this massive capacitor bank, and this is where all the energy gets stored. Now this capacitor bank can store something like 20 kilojoules, and if you don't know much about electronics, that is a lot of energy. That is a very, very dangerous amount of energy. And in fact, I mean, if you touch any of those down there, that right there while it's live, you're killed instantly. I mean, you're a corpse before you hit the floor. So this is definitely not something that you can mess around with. It's a very, very dangerous device. Inside that laser is a giant flash lamp. Now, it's a lot like a camera flash, except it's many thousands of times stronger. But in fact, it's always hooked up to that capacitor bank there. The charge just doesn't flow through it because it's usually not conductive. But in order to make it conductive so I can fire it, I built this trigger circuit here using a 555 timer, a MOSFET, and then some protective components, and then a ignition coil from a car. So let me hit it here. That's a lot of voltage. That's like probably close to 50,000 volts. It's enough to ionize the xenon inside that lamp to make it conductive. With my lamp trigger, I leave one electrode sitting at ground potential, and then apply the high voltage to that conductive reflective wall there. And watch, let me hit it there. So you can see it lighting up there. It's ionizing the gas inside and making it conductive. And now this is called an external triggering scheme. There are better methods of triggering here, but this method is effective and it works, and it does look pretty cool. This laser is a very classical design. In fact, it's very similar to the first laser ever built. So inside there's a big crystal of ruby surrounded by a lamp and a shiny reflector. Then I have these two mirrors here, which allow the light to bounce back and forth and get that optical amplification. But these are very, very special mirrors. You can't just stick any old regular mirrors there and expect it to work. In fact, this laser would annihilate that in one shot. So I have these very special mirrors made for me by Esco Optics. And they have a very good coating on them that prevents them from ionizing during the big laser pulse. And in fact, I did some math here, and it turns out that the electric field on the surface of those mirrors approaches 3 megavolts per meter. Now that's the electric field that you need to rip apart air molecules in a lightning strike. So that's a very, very strong field. So it's amazing that these mirrors can take the beating from this laser. Alright, it's time for some test shots. Now at first I aimed it at some plastic, and this actually has two functions. For one, it's fun to blow up plastic with giant lasers, but also I could use this to test the beam profile, and by looking at the shape of the crater it leaves, I can tell if the mirrors are misaligned or not. Now that extremely intense laser pulse doesn't bury as deep into the plastic as you might expect, and that's because as soon as that laser starts to fire, the surface of the plastic begins to boil off and turns into a hot plasma that ends up absorbing most of the rest of the light that comes from the laser. So then all of that energy goes into heating up that expanding fireball, and you get that explosion there on the surface. But because of that, not much energy makes it to the plastic, and you just get a very shallow crater. For my second test, I tried shooting through a razor blade, which is a classical test of pulse lasers, but I ran into a really interesting issue. This lens was brand new when I put it in front of the laser to focus it down, and in that one shot that you just saw, it caused the glass to shatter. Now that is amazing, because considering glass is pretty much clear, most of the light passes straight through it. It might absorb something like 1% of the light going through it. So that 1% is enough to cause that glass to explode, which just shows how unbelievably high energy this laser is. That is amazing. I never thought I'd see the day when my lasers would start eating lenses like candy. That's crazy. After seeing the laser blast through lenses that were actually meant for taking a lot of light, I decided to test it on another piece of glass. This soda bottle.
Oh, that's nuts. That did not go as expected. So the laser beam hit right here, and it only cracked here, but it ended up shattering above it. That's really interesting. Must have made some weird stress fracture that caused it to shatter up there. Now in future videos using this laser, I don't have to